Hi, I'm George and welcome to part 6 of the Typhoon series. In this episode we're going to have a look at finishing off the rocket. We got to attach the fins, there's a couple of other small bits we got to do, and we have to paint it and finally do a full-on pressure test as well. Now there aren't many days before launch, so let's jump straight into it. Before we do anything else to the rocket, we need to pressure test it first, because if this fails, there's no point in wasting time attaching anything else to it. Since we're again doing a hydrostatic test, we need to fill the pressure chamber with water. Now the capacity here is around 20 litres. Once full, we hook up the launcher's release head to the nozzle, since that's the easiest way to get the pressure hose connected to the nozzle. The other end of the hose is connected to the scuba tank with the large pressure gauge. Here we're trying to figure out what would happen if the nozzle lets go, and we decided just to lean it up against the fence. Okay, let's do the test. At 40 psi we pause the test and inspect to see if there's any leaks. At this low pressure, the rocket's safe to approach. All looks good, so we can proceed with the rest of the test. 100, 220, 300. We held it at 300 psi for a couple of minutes to make sure that there wasn't any slow deformation or any leaks. It was all good, so we depressurized the rocket. Then it was time to water the lawn. Okay, time to attach the fins. We first want to tack them on with 24-hour epoxy. We run a bead on the rocket as well as on the fin. The fin then gets carefully inserted into the fin alignment jig and dropped into place. It takes about 6 hours before the glue cures enough before we can move on to the next fin. Attaching the fin like this over the curved section gives the root edge extra stiffness compared to if the root edge was just straight. The fin also helps support the motor mount tube. And here again we're inserting the fin into the alignment jig. The next day we mask off the fillets. We're using epi glue for the fin fillets. Now being a gel epoxy, it makes it a little hard to measure by volume as you can't pour it. So we use a couple of measuring spoons and we fill them with a paddle pop stick and then scoop them out again into the mixing cup. Once mixed, we heap it into the fillet joint. To give us a nice smooth shape, we use the end of a PVC pipe to run along the fillet. And of course the reason why we use epi glue is that you can turn it over and do the next fillet without the upside down one sagging. When all the fillets are done, we remove the tape while the glue is still wet. And here's a close-up of the fillets. Time to attach the rail buttons. We can't do through the wall rail buttons easily on a pressure chamber, and so we mount them on short sections of curved aluminium. To align them on the rocket, we put them on the rail and then align the rail with the center line of the rocket. We can then mark where the rail buttons can be glued. We're using 24-hour araldite to glue the rail buttons directly to the surface of the pressure chamber. Then they can get taped down to prevent them from moving. We add an extra layer of fiberglass over the entire aluminium plate to better hold it in place against the pressure chamber. We can now sand the fillets. We're reinforcing the fillets with 3 layers of fiberglass with alternating orientation. Each layer is also wider than the next to feather the edges nicely. This is kind of like doing tip to tip, just on a smaller scale. This is an L2 cert rocket, so we don't want the fins breaking off on landing. Once all the fillet reinforcements are done, we again remove the tape while the glue is still wet. And here are the final fillets and rail buttons attached. Time's running short, so we need to paint the rocket. We mask off everything we don't want painted with masking and electrical tape. The whole rocket then gets a final sand. We don't touch the rocket after this with ungloved hands. First we put on a few coats of spray putty. This helps fill in any of the fibre weave patterns. After that it is lightly sanded, which gives it a much smoother finish to apply the top coats to. We're using Duramax spray paint because it dries very quickly and you can handle the rocket within a couple of hours. And of course we do the same for the nose cone and payload bay tube. Later that day we can remove the masking tape from the fins and the nozzle. Ooh, nice and shiny. To attach the payload bay to the pressure chamber, we're using 8 M4 screws. On smaller rockets, we just made threads directly into the PVC ring, but because of the bigger loads, we're using nuts this time. The nuts are held in place with this 3D printed ring. That ring then gets glued into the inside of the PVC ring. This allows the nuts to wiggle a little bit, so it's easy to thread the screws into them. Last of all, we need to put the vinyl decal on. We ordered this custom one online for around $20. And here is the rocket all finished, ready for flight. So it was time to take it out to the launch site and test it. Okay, start pressurizing, please.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go! Shoots out.
So as you saw, the rocket's now flown as a water rocket. If you want to see the full video of that launch, click up here, or maybe up here, or in the description. In the next video, we're going to do some slight modifications to the rocket so it can fly as a Pyro rocket, and those are only very minor. We're going to fly it on a J360 for our level 2 certification attempt coming up in a couple of weeks, so don't miss that episode. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.